All right, here we are live. We've got University of Penn coach Roger Reina back with us, and he's been with us before. You guys have seen him on. You guys know who he is, and he's with us. Obviously, the head wrestling coach over at Penn, also over at the PRTC, and he's back talking to us. One big thing is the addition of Jordan Burroughs to your program at the PRTC, and then of course, how we can kind of rally around, wrestling and, Olympic sports during these times to try to keep everything going. But thanks for coming back, Coach Rain. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Dan. Really appreciate it as well.
Yeah, and of course, everybody out there, thank you for the support. And obviously, we were talking a little bit earlier. It seems like in the Philadelphia area, you guys are kind of evening out a little bit, so you may see some doors opening up here shortly.
Yeah, I think so. We moved into some positive direction, and I think for the most part, citizens are cooperating, and of course, the better we work together, the quicker this goes away. So, and amidst that, just the individual citizen cooperation, I think a lot of our health centers, including Penn Medicine, everybody's on a race to the cure, a race to the vaccine, and so a lot of effort going into the science as well.
Yeah, and it's great. I think I saw a few articles yesterday. I think one came out of the UK and somewhere else that said that some vaccine testing has been successful. So I don't know if I want to be the first in line. I think maybe I want to be the second in line. I don't want to be the first one, but maybe that's a normal thought, right?
Yeah, I would think so. I think that's a fair thought.
Yeah, test it on someone else. But man, so first of all, great news for your PRTC there. What a big name you guys grabbed, and good for you.
Yeah, we're really excited, and appreciate the opportunity for Jordan Burroughs to return, to the Philadelphia area. He grew up from just about 15, 20 miles away, Sicklerville, New Jersey, in South Jersey. So it's really, this is the athlete coming home to finish his career story, and so we're super excited about it. We'd actually started conversations with Jordan way back, before the Rio Games 2015. So this has been, 5 years in the works of having discussions with Jordan and his wife Lauren and Coach Brandon Slay of the PRTC, and we're really thrilled with it. And here's a guy that's the most decorated U.S. wrestler of our era, and potentially the greatest of all times. And he's trusting us with his the tail end of his career to try and help make that happen through the Paris Games.
Yeah, it's got to be really cool. So, so he will actually be training there, and do you think at some point he'll transition into being one of your coaches as well?
Yeah, so the transition point initially was going to be just after the Tokyo Games, and obviously since that's been postponed a year, Jordan decided he wanted to continue to see the Tokyo Games through while he trains at Nebraska. So he's going to continue through this year. The Olympic trials scheduled for April up at Penn State. The Tokyo Olympic Games next summer, the identical dates as they would have been this past summer. And then Jordan will come up to Philadelphia September of 2021 and continue competing through the Paris Games 2024. So there's both announcement, of Jordan coming back to the Philadelphia area to finish his career, but it's also, his commitment to keep competing through Paris. And people were wondering, they weren't sure, but he's said, I'm hungry, I'm learning, I'm growing, my body's healthy. He wants to keep competing, so that's great news for the United States.
Yeah, I think one last run or something.
Yeah, he plans to compete to the World Championships, 2022, 23, and then the Paris Games in 24.
So awesome. Yeah, so he'll get 2 more runs. This one is almost up. He would have went this year.
Yeah.
Cool. So man, you'll get a lot of visitors, I'm sure, coming to watch him practice. That'll be pretty awesome, man. And obviously for the RTC program, for the area of Philadelphia, for kids in the area that are wrestling in the local colleges, to be able to drive over there and and watch a guy like that and be able to dream big and be able to look at someone like that and say, man, that's who I want to be. It's going to be huge.
Yeah, it really is. And, I think it's important for everybody to understand that, we have many different wrestling organizations within Philadelphia that are working together, under this same Philadelphia wrestling umbrella. And it's really, the idea that we believe in a better opportunity by working together and the synergies. And so these organizations include the University of Pennsylvania, Drexel University, the Pennsylvania Olympic Regional Training Center, which is a partnership between Penn and Drexel, and then Philly Beat the Streets, with well over 1,000 kids, wrestling in programs that, 15, 20 years ago didn't exist, right? So, and then with the RTC, that's several different levels there, because you've got the high school qualifiers, by placing in the top 6 in their state at either freestyle or Greco, or top 8 in Fargo, or the regionals, top 4 in regionals also is a qualification standard in either freestyle or Greco-Roman. So, there's really hundreds and hundreds of kids that qualify in this region. So if you think of all those, different communities of wrestlers and families, and Jordan's going to have the ability to make an impact on all those kids. And so, and I think that's part of the attraction for him, is to help further, enhance his legacy, leverage his position to really inspire kids. And I think with the RTC guys, because we had, 5 other commitments come on board just this past year with Joey McKenna, Ethan Lezak, Dave McFadden, Ben Honus, and then Mark Hall, all 5, committed in the past year. And all those guys are really young in terms of their Olympic or senior level careers, all really in their first or second year. So Jordan has that opportunity to really, kind of be a player coach, for those guys as well, and share his experience. It reminds me of, Dave Schultz back in the day when he came out of retirement and was really kind of a, player coach. He was wrestling at the highest level, finals of the world championships, but also really developing the younger talent that was coming along. And we expect Jordan to have that kind of impact across all those communities.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, those guys got to be like licking their lips, man. They got to be so happy to be young, and obviously those guys you named are top wrestlers in our country, but just like in any other sport, there's our good athletes, and then there's elite, right? So even the good ones and the great ones love to be around the elite ones, right? So just makes them better. That's awesome. But
Yep.
I mean, I know something real close to your heart. Obviously, you were the president at the NWCA for a long time, and very familiar with the growth of the sport, growing the sport, protecting the sport, and obviously right now with, as you mentioned, 250 Olympic sporting programs being eliminated throughout this coronavirus pandemic, and some have been wrestling, and that's your sport. I mean, you don't want to see any sport eliminated, but obviously your sport is wrestling. And what do we need to do to start to get behind and rally around, the NCAA, the NAIA, the NWCA, whatever, to keep these schools from having to do that?
Yeah. Well, clearly it's challenging economic times, very serious, challenging economic times for, universities overall and their athletic departments in particular. So for years and years and years, we've worked really hard with the National Wrestling Coaches Association to promote the positive attributes of the sport. I've got their website up here, and I would just encourage everybody to take some time and go to the National Wrestling Coaches Association website. They've got a growing wrestling tab, and they've compiled a lot of information that's really helpful to be able to reference in conversations. And I think it's really important, whether it's a club program, a high school program, collegiate programs of any level, for coaches, the leaders of those organizations, to be really well versed in the strength of the sport. The scholastic facts, scholastic boys wrestling is the 7th sport in terms of participation. There's 268,000 high school wrestlers, boys, and on the girls' side, women's side, it really is one of the fastest growing sports in the United States. Women's wrestling was introduced into the Athens Olympic Games in 2004, the 100th running of the modern Olympic Games, and women's wrestling was the only sport that was added in that 100th anniversary. Right now, there's 70 plus colleges that sponsor a women's varsity wrestling program, and just this past spring, the NCAA Division III, the NCAA Division II, and then subsequently the NCAA Division I all recognized women's wrestling as an emerging NCAA sport. So that puts it in a status that a lot of athletic directors can look at and say, wow, this is a great opportunity to add opportunities, for women athletes. And it balances that male-female ratio between the two sports. So I just think it's really important to be proactive in understanding the strength of the sport at all levels, and having the leaders of programs to be able to articulate that no matter who they're talking to, right? So that's, I think, really one key thing. Another key thing with the National Wrestling Coaches Association, Mike Moyer, the executive director there, does a phenomenal job in many, many ways. But one thing he's done that I think is particularly important, in these times, is he's formed a coalition with other Olympic sports organizations, so other coaching associations, so soccer, track and field, swimming, field hockey, etc. I think they're volleyball. There's 17, I believe, in this coalition of Olympic sports, and they've come out with some strong positions. And I think that mobilization, of those sport communities, it amplifies the voice of what we all feel, which is providing opportunities for kids. When these programs get dropped, and several colleges have made these announcements in the past weeks, those opportunities sometimes come back, but typically they go extinct, and they go extinct for generations to come. So it's much better to be proactive, to try and get out in front of that, by being able to articulate the strength of the sport, but also being able to mobilize influential people in your community, whether they're business people who, love wrestling, want to get behind your program, whether it's, people financially who are going to support a program, or in some cases, they're people that may have like political ties in government or service, public service, that can be helpful. And I think that all those things used to not be considered part of the coach's job. But in this day and age, I think it's absolutely, part of our job when we're leading an organization to be able to represent the sport in that manner.
Yeah, and I had a question because I was reading some articles, and for example, and I'm sure I'll ask these questions to other guys too, but for example, Stanford says at the end of 2021 or whatever, we're going away. So now student, wrestler A is a wrestler, but also has an academic scholarship. Stanford has stated that we're not going to eliminate your scholarship. You can still do that through the end of your undergraduate year, but the kid still wants to wrestle. But now the kid is torn because he's at a highly academic program, just like you have at Penn. And he's saying, wow, do I give up the opportunity to have a Stanford diploma? Or is my love and passion for wrestling so strong that I go on? And now they're torn between that. And that's, why should a kid at 18 years old have to make that decision?
Yeah, it's a tremendously challenging position, and it just doesn't feel fair to the kids. The schools recruited those kids, they scholarshiped them. You would think that they would honor that commitment all the way through. However, when a university like Stanford, one of the premier athletic programs in all the country, comes out and makes the announcement that they're dropping double-digit sports, it just goes to show the economic challenge, that these athletic departments are facing. And I think particularly the schools that are so reliant on football money, television money, football, basketball, the sponsorship packages that come with those events. So it's really challenging. I think that I read in the Athletic Business News, the University of Wisconsin, is looking at potentially a 60 to $100 million loss if there's not a football season this fall. So these are very real, very serious, economic times. And,
Yeah,
and that's why,
I think I read, and I wrote it down, but I think, well, Stanford stated that it cost them $200 million to sustain all teams in the current state. I guess they have 36 teams. The only other school that has that many is Ohio State with 37. But I think it said Ohio State gets some stuff funded from other directions that Stanford might not. Stanford kind of sustains their own funding. So I don't think people, at least I didn't realize it takes that much to fund all those programs. That's a healthy amount of money. But some things I don't understand. I mean, Ken, do you think that obviously the revenue loss is huge? I've read some stuff about Title IX. Do you think maybe do you think women's wrestling or women's sports had something to do with some of these teams being?
Yeah, it's hard to tell. I think that the balance of opportunities for both men and women in college sports is absolutely part of the ongoing conversation in any athletic department. And it should be. I've got two children. I've got a son and a daughter, and I think they both ought to have chances to to pursue athletic and their academic pursuits. And I think everybody would agree with that conceptually, right? So. But when you have a football program, when you have wrestling program, they don't have female counterparts. That starts to skew the proportionality prong. The truth is that there's actually three prongs to Title IX. Proportionality is one of them. The other two are harder to measure, right? And you can rely on any one of the three prongs to be in compliance with Title IX. So the other two are meeting the interests and abilities of the underrepresented gender, right? And so that's one prong, but it's very hard to measure, because if someone comes in and they say they want a women's rugby team or equestrian or something, right? Do they have the interest, and do they have the ability to be an NCAA Division 1, 2, or 3 athlete at that level? So that's a second prong. The third prong is a history of adding opportunities for the underrepresented gender. And so it could be that you add a women's wrestling program, and that suffices to meet one of those three prongs for Title IX, even if your proportionality numbers don't exactly add up to the proportion of male and female students at that school. So, and then there's a rising number of women as compared to men that are going to college. So as that proportion of female students rises, the expected proportionality of athletic opportunities needs to mirror that, right? So proportionality is a difficult one when you've got football and when you've got wrestling that doesn't have a counterpart. But women's wrestling is absolutely growing very fast. It's over 21,000 high school participants, over 70 colleges that now sponsor wrestling, and then being in the Olympics since 2004. I think it's a great opportunity to provide these girls more college choices and Division I choices.
That's it's just sad, sad to see when people, because I mean, not only if you take a sport away, there's employees, there's trainers, there's all sorts of people that you affect, and it's not just the student. Not that it's just a student, but it's not the athlete only, right? And you're affecting so many families. So I don't know how. Do you think we're going to see more of this, or do you think we can maybe sustain some sort of, I don't know, prevention?
Well, I think I'm calling for prevention with everybody I talk to.
Yeah.
Be really active in your community. Dan Gable, back in the day when Iowa wrestling was at the very top, he said, "I never rest a day that I just assume wrestling's going to be here at Iowa. I'm vigilant about my program every day, and everyone should be." And as a young coach, I was coming up and I heard Coach Gable say that, and it really made a strong impression on me. So absolutely be proactive. But there are other ways to solve problems. And I bring up our athletic director at Penn, Dr. Grace Calhoun. I mentioned to you just before the show that
Yeah.
Dr. Calhoun, she chairs the Division I Council in the NCAA. So what does that mean? That Division I Council is every athletic director at the Division I level, plus all of the conference commissioners at the Division I level. So the commissioner of the SEC, the Big Ten, the Pac-12, all across the board. So it is a high-powered group, and Dr. Calhoun chairs that. And she came out with a public statement recently that Penn would not drop any of its 33 varsity sports. We'll find other ways to solve our financial problems. Frankly, we've had a phenomenal fundraising year, record fundraising year for Penn Wrestling, record fundraising year for the PRTC. So we've had got our community really on board to support our program and support the opportunities for our kids. And every sport at Penn, that's our model, is to work with your alumni who have participated in that sport, others from the community who are interested in supporting it. And we work really hard, at making sure that we're broad-based, in terms of, financial support, but also, involvement and advocacy for, the great things that sport teaches us, and the values that we carry on for the rest of our lives. And so Dr. Calhoun, I think, as chair of that Division I Council, to come out publicly and state that, she provides an example for athletic directors across the country that there are other ways to solve problems. And I think we need to challenge the creativity of athletic directors who are under these kinds of pressures, but also provide them solutions, help solve their problems. And if the problems are financial, then it's, I think it's incumbent upon, all the coaches across all sports, at those institutions to help solve that problem. And,
Do you think that, first of all, it's got to be comforting for Penn and Penn staff to have their president behind them saying, hey, you guys are good. Don't worry. Students, be home, enjoy your family, get healthy. Don't worry. We'll be back on the mat, on the field, on the court, in the pool, whatever it may be. Right.
Yep.
But second, do you think that these schools, as far as ADs, are reaching out and talking to a committee that's involved with Grace before they're pulling the plug? Is there a committee that's able that she can put together, or I'm sure she's trying to put together, that, hey, before you pull the plug, let's put our heads together here and see how, as a country, as a conference, as a division, we can help prevent some of that?
Yeah, well, certainly it's a point of discussion. Not only Stanford here recently, but Brown University announced some cuts. Dartmouth announced some cuts, and there's others. University of Cincinnati soccer was dropped. Old Dominion wrestling, was dropped in our sport. So it is a conversation that happens, but I think ultimately those decisions are made at the institutional level, at the school level, between the athletic director and between the president, their board of trustees. So I think it's important to understand that, in your sport community, working to get alumni on those boards of trustees, on those athletic overseers, to work cooperatively with the administration at an institution, to help be involved, be part of that conversation, while it's going on, because ultimately those decisions are made locally at the institution.
Yeah, I mean, it would be nice, of course. I'm just a dude with a TV, with a live show. Dr. Calhoun's probably forgot more things than I'll ever know in my life. But I'd imagine they're trying to put together something that they send out to all these ADs and commissioners that says, hey, look, there are some options. There is some relief that can be put in here. Here are the options, and how can we prevent this from kind of snowballing into school after school after school after school? Because you're affecting lives. So,
yeah. And I would say this too, Dan. I would add, kind of on the optimistic side. I'm a very optimistic person by nature, and I think back to the days, early days of sport growing in colleges. And there were individuals who were really pioneers who were advocating for adding sports, back in those times. Not everybody knows, but the University of Pennsylvania actually hosted the first college tournament in history all the way back in 1905. And as an early coach, I got to meet some of the people that had coached, previously, had sat in my seat previously. And back then, they were growing programs. They were identifying schools that saw the benefit, that saw the value, that programs that were aligning with the educational mission of the university to create even greater benefit and opportunity for their kids. And so I think we need a lot of that pioneering spirit too. And again, I'm looking at the NWCA website here, but Mike Moyer and his team, they've done a phenomenal job in terms of growing wrestling programs. And over 240 new or reinstated intercollegiate programs across all divisions since 2001. And I think so many people are looking at the downside when a program gets dropped, but quietly, maybe not quietly if you're involved, but I know Mike's worked incredibly hard with athletic directors, with presidents of universities, with business leaders in these communities. They could Arkansas State starting up, Fresno was saved. And Mike's
I've had several coaches on here that have just added programs this year.
Yeah.
So 1-year programs. So they're definitely, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but on that thought, I think I've seen it too. So, but yeah, I mean, on that thought, and correct me if I'm wrong, because you're in schools, but by adding athletic programs, doesn't that create more opportunities to have students and raise the enrollment and have kids on your campus and your brand being out there and spoken about and marketed and merchandised?
Absolutely, on all those areas. And I think that, in many of these cases of these, 240 new or reinstated wrestling programs since 2001, in many cases, they are enrollment-driven universities that are looking to, to add students, to grow their enrollment. And they see wrestling as, hey, here's an opportunity for, 30, 35, additional students at the school. And then when you map it to the strength of the high school wrestling being the 7th most participated sport, record number of high school programs right now, you see that there's a grassroots, if you will, youth and scholastic feeder that goes into colleges, with a more limited opportunity in wrestling than in many other sports. So as we grow these programs, there is the base of people who want that opportunity in college, right? So we're not creating college programs without the groundswell of people who want those people want those opportunities at the high school level. So I think you're exactly right. And I give Mike a big shout out, with his leadership of the NWCA in helping start all these programs, and then also this coalition of other Olympic sports that I think is really important.
Yeah. So even though we're seeing some programs dissipate, or for a lack of better words, right? We're on the other side, we're seeing a lot of new programs flourish and open up and come to light. The NAIA, I just had a young lady on that Emma Bruntill, who's just a hammer, and she's not NWWC anymore. Now she's NCAA. So she's like, that's been huge. And she's a big advocate on, is it House of Wrestlers with, advocating women in sport. And she's already got, as soon as I got off the phone, she sent me, let's see, Julia Salata. She sent me Julia Salata's number, and Julia Salata signed up. So I think, we all watch boys wrestling. We all watch men's wrestling. But I think we need to get behind the women, because right now it seems like they're the ones kind of towing the ship for us. Am I wrong?
Well, I mean, it's like I mentioned, already, it's one of the fastest growing sports, at the scholastic level. I'm just reading off the number of states that sanction a state championship tournament for girls in high school. Well more than half of the states across the country. And I know more are talking about it. And now that the NCAA decision, to recognize women's wrestling as an emerging sport status, this is really important. There have been programs, Division I college programs, very high level programs that have talked about once it becomes a sanctioned sport that they're going to add, right? And so this NCAA emerging status is one step in that process. The women also at the world level and Olympic level, we're in an Olympic year, right? So, understanding the success of the United States in terms of medal production at the World Championships and the Olympic Championships, wrestling is one of the most successful sports of producing Olympic medals. So just another, kind of important piece of information. I think we all need to become really well versed in talking about, when we're building support for our programs, and that's not just college programs. It includes college programs, but also high school programs, also youth programs and club programs around the country. So I really think it's this leadership it spans across all levels.
Yeah, and so for example, like here in Florida, we don't have a Division I, as you know. And with the expansion of NCAA recognizing and blah, 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 could now, my English, but could adding a women's wrestling program be the catapult to finally get a men's program at your Division I school or Division I college? Not just here in Florida, but anywhere.
Well, we've got a prime example in the Southeast with Presbyterian in South Carolina, right? With Mark Cody taking that program over. It's both a men's program and a women's program coming in simultaneously. So I think the answer to that is yes, absolutely, Division I program, right? So I think that's an opportunity. I really think it comes down. I don't believe there's one strategy that works at institutions across the country.
Everybody would be doing it, right?
Yeah, I think thinking about it that way is actually limiting. I think the reality is having really good conversations with leaders in various communities to understand what's important to them. What are they trying to accomplish? Is it increasing enrollment? Is it adding opportunities for the underrepresented gender? Right? What is the problem that we can help as a wrestling community? How can we help other people solve their problems? And I think that's the mindset that really leads to, getting people to think in new ways, getting administrators, athletic directors, university presidents to open up the opportunity. But we first have to listen and understand what their problems are and how we can help solve them. Right?
Could we see more programs stay alive with like the Cal Bakersfield method?
Yeah, I think again, it's institution by institution. So what's most important, to that area, right? And I'll say this too, that building that coalition and building that support within a community, financial support, political support, community support. By doing that and by being involved in those conversations, I think that's where the opportunities emerge, right? And so, but I think it's a case by case basis. There's not a one size fits all solution.
Yeah, and I think talking to Coach Manny over there at Cal, he's in an area where they have really grown a community and they like the sport. They love the sport. They're able to fundraise. They were able to survive and save that sport there. And I mean, obviously Stanford is an affluent area, an affluent college. You've got alums, so you would think that could be an option for them too. I'm sure. I guess any option would work, right?
Yeah, it's understanding, what the needs are of the leaderships of the institution, and then aligning, our vision of growing the sport with what their interests are, what their needs are.
Yeah, I wonder if there's a show going on right now with like the croquet team that got cut, and they're going, "Hey, we need to save croquette in America or whatever, right? I think that's going on another show right now, or swimming and diving. There's some diving show on right now saying save Stanford diving.
I think that the truth is, Dan, that wrestling, took an early hit and a hard hit with Title IX interpretations that were coming out in the 70s and 80s. And I think that compared to a lot of sport communities, we're better positioned. We're more aware now how to have these kinds of conversations, what needs to happen. I know you mentioned the NWCA's leadership course. There's a leadership course at the collegiate level. There's a leadership course at the high school level. And really the intent there is to help these coaches understand how to be CEOs of their organization. Not just come into the room and X's and O's. Of course, we love that. And we want to run practice and go compete. And so, of course, right. But what about the marketing? What about the community building? What about the fundraising? What about, hiring the right people and making sure that, the kids are treated and the families are treated in really respectable ways that reflect well on our sport and the community and all these facets, which I think, there were days, like I mentioned, where, coaches didn't feel that was part of their job. Right. But to understand, hey, as leaders of these organizations, that is part of our job. And we need to get better in these areas and grow into these areas. And I think, for me, it's personal growth too, and professional growth, when you learn these other areas and commit to them. And, I think it helps us grow. I feel great about it. It's challenging time-wise sometimes. It's an opportunity to learn. It's an opportunity to grow. And I think that, these programs were built out of a day where a lot of coaches didn't understand, that part of the equation. So I think those are really important. And I think that, wrestling again is ahead of a lot of sport communities just because we've had to, in a lot of cases to get through that initial phase. As I came back to coaching at Penn just 3 years ago now, I also feel that, those programs that, kind of made it through that early wave of Title IX fallout, have really doubled down and entrenched their programs. I think they're stronger than ever, a lot of them. I know with us at Penn, we've got, many millions of dollars in endowments specifically for wrestling. We've got a broad-based annual fundraising program. We've got really strong involvement with our Olympic Regional Training Center. So we've really grown the community and grown the support. So, I think, we're very well positioned, but, we're always looking for ways to align with our administration and want to make sure our guys are always reflecting well on our sport as they carry themselves in the community.
And it goes back to, you got to fail to succeed, right? So some of these programs that failed learned how to dig their roots deeper when they came back to be able to have something to say, hey, wait, we don't have to go anywhere. We've put a surplus of money away, or we've done this to really grow our community. And then, small things that I was reading in the leadership as I'm going through the leadership course now, but things I was reading as far as just being able to fill all 14 weight classes. And because if you only have half a team, it's hard to get more duels. And then from what I understand now is it's very important to have more dual competition at your school to create an atmosphere that students who don't wrestle come to and watch it, so that now they go, wow, that seems pretty cool. I want to try that, right? And I guess focus on injury and things like that. I think I read where Mike Moyer said, and I could totally be kiboshing this, so correct me if I totally screw it up, but he said that an empty weight class is either someone who's injured, or it's an athlete you haven't found yet. Something to that to that extent, and it made a lot of sense the way he said it.
Yeah, I think that's really important, and I'm hearing this more and more from the high school level, that the number of forfeits that are happening in high school dual meets is very troublesome, to these state associations. In Pennsylvania, we just changed, the high school state association just changed the weight classes because of the number of forfeits. They reduced the number of weight classes. So I think it's really important, that the high school coaches out there are, identifying those kids walking the hallway, that maybe they haven't found the sport yet. Sometimes, as we are college recruiters, they talk about our ability to recruit. For us, actually, I think it's really easy, right? You've got, national rankings, you've got these big boards, you can look all different kinds of places, easy to find contact information these days for high school kids, and you go recruit. To me, the exceptional recruiters a lot of times are there's the high school teacher who's walking the hallways and identifies someone who's like, hey, that could be maybe that kid could be a wrestler, right? And they talk them into giving it a shot and and getting them involved. And of course, as we know, like once it's in your blood, it stays in your blood. So I think sometimes those are those maybe are the ones that really deserve the credit for recruiting.
Yeah, like there's a 103 kid, let's grab him.
Yeah.
Or there's a heavyweight. Well, man, this is awesome. I'm so happy you reached back out to me and just allowed me to be a part of this. And plus, I mean, I learned so much talking with you because you're educating me at the same time. So it's been awesome. And then, shout out to NWCA for allowing me to take the leadership course and helping to educate me based on the platform that I created. And that's helping me learn. And, as I said, I can't wait to watch wrestling through my new eyes. And then it's cool. I mean, I hope that I can reach out to our two coaches, Coach Wheeldryer and Coach Rose, and they know more wrestling. They probably forgot more wrestling than I'll know, but based on learning as a parent and learning going through all these things, maybe there's things that I can help with as far as doing some recruiting or some sales pitching or maybe some fundraising or even designing tournaments and scheduling, or just maybe helping them. I've learned so much from, this is 230 interviews. So I hope I got some knowledge from it. Right. And just all you coaches really teaching me and helping me. And what an amazing sport. Yeah. It's sad to see some programs go, but it's obviously very refreshing to see all the programs that are coming.
Yep.
And it's difficult because if you're a kid at Stanford, you don't want to hear that Presbyterian just added a program. You want to hear, I committed to Stanford. I want to stay at Stanford. Educate me there. And I got to meet Coach Borelli Sr. I had him on my show, and everybody just speaks so highly of that family. So I'm sure right now they're going through some adversity, and I just breaks my heart to know. So, but I'm sure they've been through tough times. So I'm sure they'll come through this, and there's people out there going through worse, right? So I'm sure they'll be able to do it.
We've got to dig in and do what we can to to support each other through the sport. I think that's incredibly important, and I think also just like making sure we're taking care of our areas at home, right, of our communities at home. And so for us, again, back to what we first started talking about with Jordan Burroughs, committing to come back to Philadelphia, for the completion of his career, and to have Jordan be part of inspiring, all these, different wrestling entities, Beat the Streets and Drexel and Penn and the PRTC, to really believe in a better future and really believe in growing the sport. So we're 100% committed to that and really excited for our future.
Yeah. Hey, Philly's a fighting town. It's always been known for that. I know boxing isn't at a level that it once was, but I know it's still at a level in those streets of Philly, because I know those little gyms are still open and hidden throughout the city. Yeah, bringing it back to that city is cool, and that's a fun city. It's a college-ridden city. What an awesome town. So to be in that town, to be a kid that's getting the opportunity to go to that town. I talked to Martinez, who you're getting, and I was like, you are gonna love Philadelphia. I know you're going as an athlete, but just being able to walk everywhere, being able to walk right to a train station and get to go to somewhere you want to go, and being able to go down to that cool market right there and walk around and eat, and just maybe not as a wrestler, but you'll have to stay away from there during the season. But that's an awesome place, and now to have a Jordan Burroughs there, gosh, that's going to attract a lot of awesome wrestlers for you. So I have tried to reach out. The only way I know how to your PRTC coach, the one that you asked me to reach out to. I tried to reach out on Facebook. However, I don't know if that works or not with him. It seems like it's a page, but I don't know if it's just like a business page for his brand or for the PRTC. But I have tried to reach out, but I'd love to get a hold of him.
Yeah, for sure. Brandon, be happy to come on. I'll be glad to make sure you have each other's contact information and make that introduction.
Awesome. Yeah, and that'll be cool to talk to him. And then tomorrow I'll release a some sort of marketing thing here shortly. I am going to bring some of the Stanford guys on, some of the kids. So
Great.
Hopefully we can get a little insight to what they're feeling, what their thoughts are, what they're hearing. And I know right now the coach is kind of staying behind the curtains because I know he's probably, as you know, he's probably still in the offices doing his negotiating. So I'm sure he's working hard there. But man, it's good to hear that Grace Calhoun is the person she is, and she's up on the top of the mountain screaming loudly to all these ADs and all these commissioners. And it sounds like they're all putting their heads together to save sport as a whole. So that's great news. So thanks for telling us that. Thanks for coming on. And I think my wife is going to want me to go help her cook dinner now, so I have to obey.
It's a good thing. Thanks so much for having me on, Dan. I really appreciate what you're doing for the sport.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I appreciate you. And man, if you want to do this weekly, feel free to hit me up. And hopefully one day I'll be back up in Philly. And as you said, you may get some love up there with the NCAA. So hopefully that's the case, and I'll be up there to see it.
We got our hat in the ring. Hopefully we find out, later on this summer, but we're hopeful.
And I'll be like, one whiz wit. One whiz wit. Yeah, I got it. I'm ready.
Perfect.
All right, buddy. See you.
All right, Dan. Thanks.